magneto together internally, and external, which is the one you're doing, putting it on the engine. So this number of things that must occur at the same time, that's what we're going to talk about right now when it comes to timing case. Has everybody got that down?
Almost.
Okay. Testing?
Boost.
Everybody good? Okay. So within the magneto, the magnet rotor must be just past neutral axis, is E gap. Remember we discussed the E gap when we were talking about electrically? Just type fast. Okay, so this just past neutral axis, you can feel this when you're rotating your magneto, when you're spinning the magnet. So remember how you guys said the cam opens and closes the points, right? So you can literally feel that right before it's going to catch over. When you guys assemble your magnetos, if you want, I'll come over and I'll show you what it feels like, but you should be able to see it when you guys are timing your points, and you'll be able to feel that little bit of right before it kicks over.
What does it feel like?
Well, it feels like, you know when it's going to roll over? You'll have to feel it with the magneto. I don't have mine assembled right now. But when you have yours assembled, I'll show you in the lab what it feels like. But this is just, visually you're going to be looking at the points are just opening at that point. But you'll be able to feel it with the magneto completely assembled. It'll feel like it's just about ready to drop over. So you know you're going over a hump and then you drop back down, that's what you're going to feel. And some of you guys that have already assembled your magnetos might already have felt that when you're spinning it.
I mean, isn't it going so fast?
It is, but when you're holding your magneto, when you've already timed it, you're only spinning it as fast as you can do it with your hand, correct? When you're timing yours internally. So when you've internally put your magneto back together, you guys can spin it, right? I hope you can spin it. If you can't spin it, there's a serious problem. But you'll spin it by hand. Of course, you ain't going to be able to see it while the engine is running, of course. And you won't be able to see the points because everything's happening so fast. But when you're spinning it by hand, you should be able to feel that when you're timing those points. So that's what that means. No, yeah, when it's on there, you can't see it. Obviously, it's going too fast. Is that where you got confused? Yeah, okay. And then must be pointed at the correct cylinder contact on the distributor block. Of course, you want it to go to the correct cylinder that's next in the firing order, correct? Pretty straightforward. So this is just a cutaway of what inside the magneto looks like. Your contact points. You guys have already seen this. Let's just reiterate what's inside there.
There's another gear. There's like a pinion gear there.
Which gear? This one right here?
The smaller one, yeah.
This one is your metal gear that's in your guys's. So
okay.
This one was plastic at one point. Yours shouldn't have any of those in there. They actually did a recall on these. But the problem was these were breaking very easily, so they went to metal. But yeah, it's not any different gear than the gear you guys have in yours. Okay? It's nice pointing that out. I saw that and I didn't even say anything about it. So this is what it would look like if you have a cutaway. I believe Mark has a cutaway of a magneto out there. He'll show you when you guys do your checkout. But you should be able to see. So when you're rotating it down here, you'll see the points open and close. When you're timing it, you'll be able to see it, and you'll be able to feel it when it goes. So, is everybody with me so far? Pretty easy stuff? You wouldn't tell me if you weren't, I understand. So here's another electrical switch. So we just went through this before I started this, is because I want to make sure you guys understand electrically how this works. And it sounds like you guys are all pretty much up to speed on how it goes to the primary, and when it collapses and it goes across the secondary out to the distributor block, which goes out to each spark plug. And this is all this is showing. Remember, you guys have a diagram you need to draw for me? Like I said, this is perfect enough. I would just make sure when you do this that these aren't the same number of coils, because they're not. I don't know why they drew it like this. Everybody good so far? Alright.
Could you go back for 1 second? I got a question on that.
Sure.
Right where the coils are in between, is that like a transformer right there or something? What is that where it jumps?
That's the bar.
It's the bar.
Right here. Just the magnetic field in there. Okay? Did I answer your question? Okay. So, within the engine, this is talking about timing on the externally onto the engine. So, within the engine, the intake and exhaust valves must be closed, which is the compression stroke. So, your first goal is to find the compression stroke. And I have handouts for everybody. Everybody who's taken recips has already seen this, but this is just how to time the magneto to the engine. So you'll have a full directions right here. So when you guys go out and he assigns you an engine, follow this sheet and it should work perfectly. If you don't follow this sheet and you can't figure out why it's not working, please read the sheet, because that's exactly what Mark and I will tell you. So the piston cylinder that is to fire must be closed to the top of its compression stroke. Everybody got that down? You guys seem really awake tonight.
Wait, I have a question.
Yes.
So close to the top is compression stroke. So do we remove one of the spark plugs?
Yep.
Put the thumb over the hole, rotate the propeller,
So yeah, when you're looking for the compression
until
stroke,
the compression stops, and then back off a little bit?
Top dead center.
top dead center.
Right. But this is before, close to the top of this compression stroke.
Yeah, so you're gonna be right. So we're gonna get to that because you're gonna have timing marks on the engine that's gonna tell you where you're gonna set your magneto to. So when you're on the compression stroke, you'll probably put it back 25 degrees. It'll tell you on your engine where you're supposed to do that, but you want to make sure you're at top dead center on the compression stroke, and then you'll back it off from there.
That
So
was my
we'll
question.
get to that.
Okay.
Okay. And some of the engines out here may be hard to feel the compression stroke. You guys might have to use a flashlight because these haven't been ran so much that the compression hasn't built up, so you probably have to stick a flashlight in there. Alright. So this is basically telling you when we're talking about timing the magneto to the engine, you want to start at cylinder number 1. This isn't to say that you can't start somewhere else, but cylinder number 1 is where you want to start.
So then both magnetos will be connected up to that? Okay.
That's correct. We're going to talk a little bit about split timing, so they'll both be set up for cylinder number 1, but one may you might set one up to 25 degrees and another one to 23 degrees. But we'll discuss that further in the slides. And that's just for usually for bigger pistons, because when you want them to fire, you want to remember how you want to continue burn across the cylinder, so that helps make a more efficient burn. And usually the data plate will tell you that, and the maintenance manual will tell you that.
Are we doing this with our magneto?
No, your magnetos you're not doing this week. The only thing you guys are doing with your magneto is putting it on this tester to make sure it works. All the engines out there have their own magnetos already on them. So you're not going to time your magneto to the engine, no. Because, well, one you'd need 2, and you only have 1.
Yeah, but they have a nice magneto behind us, so.
Yeah.
Same thing.
Oops, sorry. There's too many.
10.
You're killing me, Lisa. You're killing me. Why would as long as yours fires, that's all that matters. If yours works on the tester, then it works. And as long as you can time a magneto to an engine, you're good. Okay, so if the magneto rotates, a spark may be generated. You kind of hope that the one is going to generate, but you could have other conditions that make it where you can't, like P-lead's grounded or something like that. So remember when I told you guys when there was a student out there at Scandinavia and he was hanging out with his buddies and it was 8 o'clock at night and he wanted to look cool and he took a picture with his friend and he put his hand on the prop. Remember, he flipped back and it killed him? It's because The magneto was hot because the P lead was shorted out, so the magneto was always hot. So when you go to off, you're grounding the magneto. If there's something wrong with that wire, it's not grounded, and it's always hot. So when you guys are around these, always assume, even though it visually looks fine, always assume that they can get back. There's lots of stories out at Gillespie where somebody's been killed because of a magneto problem. One of them actually happened when I was out there down by instrument overhaul. Just shred the guy to pieces because he thought something was wrong, and so he had his friend start the engine, and he thought he would hand prop it outside, and he got too close, and it just killed him. Okay?
Was Scandinavia aware of that? That was hot all the time?
No, because when you get up to an airplane, just like with your car, when your ignition's off, you're assuming that it's off, correct? So when you have an airplane and you see that all the switches are turned off and the key's sitting on the dashboard or the key is not in the ignition, you're going to assume that the airplane is safe to touch. Because technically if there's no problems, it is. That's not to say that there could be electrical short somewhere, and that's exactly what happened because the P lead, the wire was rubbed through, and so it didn't actually ground the magneto. So even though the switch was off, it didn't actually turn the magneto off. So, and the only way you can really know that is if you went in and tested it, but just like with your car, there's lots of things probably wrong with car you don't know. But that's why you always assume that these things could fire. So when you're playing with the prop, even when you guys are doing compression strokes, make sure if that thing kicks back that you are far enough away from it that it's not going to hurt you. And I understand when you're doing a compression test that you have to be pretty close to it, but you also want to be aware of that. So when I was out in the field, we always did 2 people, and the guy holding the air, one guy actually happened out at my job. Luckily the air had come off, but it had enough in there and it kicked back and knocked him off the ladder, and it just cut his head open, and there was no air on there. It was just whatever was left in there. It knocked him right off the ladder. So we actually made a longer hose, and he stood further away from the guy holding the prop.
Linda?
Yeah.
The tester, is it just lights lighting up, or are we actually putting some RPMs on our magneto?
The tester to see if they're timed.
Whatever we're going to be doing with our magneto.
Okay. So for your checkout, there is a tester out there. You're going to see it work right on that. It's going to spin, and you're going to see it fire.
So it is going to spin our magneto.
It is going to spin your magneto.
Okay.
Yes. It will spin your
Not
magneto.
just lights.
No.
Okay.
No, you'll see sparky things.
Oh, good.
And don't touch the sparky things. But I'm sure Mark will tell you that.
Are we allowed to test our magnetos before we leave checkout?
Nope. So you're going to assume that it works. If it doesn't work, Mark will send you back in to figure out why. So you could have a bad capacitor, and it could die right when you're out there. It's not going to say that you're going to fail the test. Because you're going to check these things before you give them to a customer, right? You're going to run the engine up. You're going to make sure that both mags do the right drop and everything. So if it doesn't fire, he's going to tell you, hey, go back in. He's not even going to do the checkout. He wants you to figure out why it's not working.
So we're just going to spin it at low RPMs.
Lisa, wait for your checkout. Yes, he's going to do it on a tester.
Okay.
He's going to spin it hard enough that you will see sparks. So you will know a glitch is firing. Okay? You really need to get out to Montgomery and take recips.
I can visualize it now.
Okay. So timing is initially set internally inside the magneto. This is when you're timing your points to open and close. It isn't set to the engine timing according to the firing order. you have that written down? Almost? So everybody gets this? So internally you're going to be timing it inside, like with the points, and the engine timing is going to go off the firing order of the engine. Your data plate should tell you that. If you can't find it there, you can find it in the maintenance manual for the engine. And then of course both timing procedures you might need to do a slight adjustment. Say the points are not opening right at the right point, you might need to do a little bit more adjustment with your points. And with the timing on the engine, you might need to adjust your magneto a little bit. We'll go through that as we go through the slides. So internal timing. So this is just how to reassemble your magnetos. The first step is to install the magnet, point, rotors, and cam. Everybody doing all right? Awake?
What is index infinitely?
That's talking about other bigger engines, but there's different points. So ours will only be one or two positions. Okay. So we have a little guy. You guys got that down? Yeah? This is just showing you another picture of what we're talking about with everything put together. We like to show pictures. So, condenser, the breaker points, breaker contact points, the cam. So everybody's getting this, right? Yes, no? Yeah? Okay. This is just showing you guys what I've already talked about with the north and south of the poles and how it all connects together. This is just a cutout of inside. So this is just talk about the points opening position, the E-gap angle. I think there's a window in there for your gap, for your E-gap. Is that correct? For my guys that have already assembled their magneto back together. You guys have timed your points. Looking at me like I'm crazy. Just tired? So when they're talking about move the position or move the rotor to maximum open to verify the point's range of operation, you're just making sure they open fully and they close fully. That's what this is talking about. But this is actually talking about your gap, that you're timing it to when the points open and close. And we have kits in the back during lab. I can show you guys the little kits that gives you the angles in there. You can also use the marks on your magneto to time the angle of when the points are opening and when they're closing. Everybody got that down? Yeah? Okay. So this may require some give and take between the E-gap angle and the breaker point's clearance. The maintenance manual gives tolerances for adjustments. Just like I said, the adjustments are written down in your manual. And I said that there is a window in there, what it can be between.
So basically, sometimes to get the correct heat angle, you have to give or take on your spark plug gap clearance.
Not your spark plug, but your points gap. Your points
Yeah,
gap.
sorry, that's what I meant.
Yeah, your
Three
points gap.
clearance.
Mhm.
So, because like I'm used to supposed to be 16 thousandths officially from the book.
Yeah, so you might need to make that a little bit one way or the other to get your angle that you're looking for. So you might have to give a little bit. And the manual should tell you that tolerance that you're allowed to go to.
Got it.
Does everybody understand that? Yeah? Everybody have that written down? Good to go? Okay. So, what do you think this is? I've been talking about these other points. So some of you guys have two sets of points in your magneto.
Or the retard.
The retard points. What do the retard points do?
Maybe easier starting.
Because the engine's turning slower, so you want everything to happen a little quicker, right?
It reduces the advance, brings it closer to
Top dead center.
the
And other ones will also have the impulse coupling that does this, and usually it's going to be on the left-hand mag that has this. There's some of you guys that have 2 points in your magneto. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah?
We do.
You guys do? That's what they're there for. So there's 2 things that help when you need a retard points, and the impulse coupling do the same thing. So they just give it that quicker start because everything needs to happen a little faster because it's not rotating as quickly. So you're going to be closer to top dead center when everything happens. It doesn't take as long to get to your Powell's magic angle, right? So if you have it fire at 25 degrees before top dead center and you're not spinning fast enough, you may not get to that magic angle because you're not spinning fast enough. So if you push them closer to top dead center and have it fire 15 degrees before top dead center, you'll achieve that because the engine's not spinning as fast. Does everybody understand that? Yes? Yes, sir.
So, I'm sorry, I'm like confused. So the retard point is like an easier way for it to start up. It's
Yeah, so
quicker, easier access.
So when we went through how the recip works, and remember we did Powell's magic angle 15 degrees after top dead center is where we want everything to happen.
Right.
So to make it happen at 15 degrees before or after top dead center, we need to open those points 25 degrees before top dead center because everything's spinning so fast, so it's going to take that long to get to 15 degrees, right? Well, when the engine isn't spinning as fast, things aren't moving as quickly. So to compensate for that, you have points that will open closer to top dead center because you don't need as much time to get to that magic angle. And that's what that's there for. And the impulse coupling does the exact same thing. Okay? You guys get that? I think you guys are struggling more this week than you were last week being tired. I feel you guys are really beautiful. Okay, if the points don't have the correct range of operation, even though they are in time, the coil will not charge correctly. Or the points will wear out prematurely. Everybody got that down?
What is the retard timing on some of these engines? Like, what's an average retard time? Like degrees.
For which engines? You're talking about somebody who works on turbines.
Okay. Wow.
So,
Well,
it
piston
could,
engines because they have magnetos.
yeah, piston engines that have magnetos. Some of them, like I said, might be 15 degrees or more.
Okay.
And what about the guys that have 2 points now? What does your guys say about your points? Do you know your different ranges on your points yet or no? Don't know yet? Okay.
I asked because of, automobile is very different. So like
It is.
the timing at idle in my Jeep is 4 degrees. So, but it has a advanced curve. So it goes from 4 to 30 or whatever.
Yeah, see, it can adjust for that. Ours,
This is more advanced.
yeah, this one doesn't adjust like your car does or your vehicle does. But it all depends on the engine itself. Does everybody have that down? Okay. So we're talking about the correct range of operation. So if you're in the wrong range of operation, basically it's not going to charge correctly. And the points will wear out prematurely, so you're not doing exactly what you want it to do. You're not going 25 degrees to get your magic angle. And when they're talking about the cam being indexed wrong, there's 2 different sides. So your guys' is just got the 2 sides. I can definitely tell my magnet's working because all my dudes are sticking to it. So if you were to pick this up and install it wrong and flip it the other way and put it back on there, it would be indexed wrong. So you only have 2 locations. So if I took this off and flipped it, it would do it backwards and it wouldn't be timed where it's supposed to be.
You mean if you took the cam off?
If I took the cam off and flipped it. And that's what he's talking about when they talk about the 2 different locations. That's what I'm talking about.
But some magnetos are infinitely
Yes.
adjustable.
Depending on how big the magneto is and how the cam is designed. Ours happens to only be 2 different locations. Because the only way you can install this is by flipping it.
It sounds like a pain.
What?
To have it infinitely adjustable.
It is, and this is a more simple way of understanding it, so.
So Linda, from the range, when it's talking about the range, it's from one cam to cam load to the next cam load. Thank you.
But you can still time it correctly. But if it's installed wrong, it's gonna not give you that range. Okay? But you don't take these apart, so you could technically if you were in an overhaul shop, but most of the time people send these out even though you guys can do them as mechanics. I think I told you guys that before. So you as a mechanic can overhaul a magneto. But if you're working in a shop, most likely you guys send your magnetos out to overhaul shop that's certified to overhaul magnetos versus doing it in the shop.
Do you personally overhaul yours?
I do not. If I had my own airplane, I would send them out to be overhauled.
Is there a magneto shop in San Diego?
According to Mr. Bella over here, there is not. Most people send theirs out. So, I don't know. I think there's one in Northern California. I've had a couple of people. Their airplanes are close to where I'm helping Lonnie build his. That they've been to Northern California to send theirs out. So they actually have to wait for it to come back.
Why would you send yours out?
Mainly because they have all of the equipment there, and it costs a lot of money to replace these. So these parts, like this magneto, this magnet, this is like a couple $100. The distributor block is a couple $100. It costs roughly $600 to overhaul your magneto. So they're going to replace whatever parts you need. So technically, it's cheaper for me to send it out. Even if you're building your airplane, so some people built their airplane from the ground up, so they've assembled their engine together and everything else. They will still send the magnetos out to be overhauled.
How much is a magneto?
A brand new one?
Yeah.
This one is about $2,000. $2 to $3,000. to overhaul is about $600 or $700 just for the bendings. The slick magnetos are more expensive.
But if you overhauled it, it would be more, that's what you're saying.
If depending on what parts are bad. So if I find out that the capacitor is bad and I just need to replace the capacitor, no, it would be cheaper for me just to replace the capacitor. But if I'm doing a full overhaul of this, you guys have read the extent of what you'd have to do with an overhaul, right? You're submerging it and all this other bearing stuff. It would be so much easier and cheaper for me to send it out, and that's why I would do it. My shop wouldn't be equipped to do all of that stuff, because you have to understand, shop's doing a bunch of other things too that's just basic maintenance. So, for me, but some people who have lots of time on their hands and money galore might decide to do that. And I'm sure there's been some out there, but most all the people, even the rich guys I know out of Gillespie, send theirs out for overhaul. I don't know why the picture's in there again. Because I guess it's to show you different locations on the cam. Because that's what we're talking about when we're talking about different different lobes. Open and close the points. Alright. So this is talking about adjusting the retard ignition point. So the first ones you're going to do is your E-gap and your range within limits. And then your overhaul manual will tell you what to set the retard ignition breaker points at for its range. And this Bennett's degree of rotation indicator we have, like I said, you can use the marks on your case, but I also have the kit to use the indicator. It shows you the degrees.
Do we have one of those, appendix degrees of rotation?
Yeah, I just said that we have I have kits in the back, so when you guys get to that point, you guys can use the kit in a buzz box, or a beater can do the same thing.
Or what?
Well, the buzz box will let you know you can hear the points opening and closing with the buzz box, but you can also visually see it. And like I said, some people have already assembled theirs. They could have used the marks on the magneto itself. There's marks on it to do the adjustment as well. I don't know what the groups did that already assembled theirs, but that's another way of timing the points. So everybody got that down? Good? Okay. So your points have slots in them to rotate them, opening and closing. I don't know if you guys noticed that, but on the breaker points they have slots, right, to shift it a little bit. That's what this is talking about. This is basically breaking it down word for word. You snug it down a little bit, then you snug the other side and make sure it doesn't move. Because once you tighten down screws, it will move things just slightly, and that's what this is talking about. So you don't have to write down word for word every single word, but it's broken down for you guys. So just keep that in mind when you guys are timing these, that once you tighten it down, it's not going to be in the same location it was when it was loose. Everybody got that down?
Just about.
Good? Okay, so just like I said, when you tighten down those screws, it may affect the clearances. And then usually the last thing to be set is the distributor rotor alignment. And your book goes through this when you guys are reassembling your magneto. This is just breaking it down for you in the lecture as well. So did anybody say they were ready for checkout in the lab? You guys are ready? Is anybody else ready for checkout? Need another week? Okay. Everybody got that down? Yeah? Okay. So this calls for correct alignment of the drive and driven gears. There are indicator marks for this alignment. So there's marks on your gear. Mine actually have little, looks like polish on theirs to show you where you're aligning them to. But all your gears have the markings on there on where you're to align them together. I think I have a picture of it further in the slide. Most can be set for either CCW or CW, just counterclockwise or clockwise. Talking about hand rotation. But you want to make sure this gear is placed where it's supposed to be for it to fire at the correct, where you're looking for the correct spark plug. And like I said, all of this is in your book as well when you guys are reassembling your magneto. So there's a lot of things that go into timing it. Pretty straightforward, right? Long week, I take it already?
Indicator marks where?
So if you guys look at your gear,
Okay,
it'll
on
show
the
you.
distributed here.
got that down? Okay, so magneto inspection and repair. So this is just a basic overview of when you're looking at the magneto, if you've got any broken fasteners or wiring and so forth. So basically obvious damage when you go up and look at this. Well, if it went sealing to the engine, remember how we have that O-ring seal?
Oh, okay,
So any kind of obvious damage like
okay.
that. So everybody got that down? Okay, we're moving on. So inspection includes checking, adjusting magnetos to engine timing. So when you're doing an inspection of this, you might check the timing on the magnetos when they're on the engine. So everything in red, you guys want to pay closer attention to. That's why it's bolded in red. Everybody got that? No? Okay. So these are just two different pictures. One is the slick magneto and one is the Bendix. We don't have a slick magneto in this class, sorry, it's really expensive to have them. But you will see them out in the field. And if you guys notice, there's a little pin right here. You guys see that back there? This pin is to hold it where it's at. So you also got to understand, when you're moving the magneto and it's rotating, you're messing with the timing as well. So when you have it where you want it timed, this pin will lock it into place on this one in particular. This one obviously does not have that. But that's when you're timing this one. I'll show you another picture of that. But these are just the two different kinds you might see out there. And you guys can time it without having something holding it locked into place. But it makes it a lot easier. Just remember when you guys are timing with the slick magnetos and you guys got a locking pin in there to keep the magneto timed where you want it to go. You move the prop, it's going to rotate in there and it's going to break that tip right off. And guess what? You got to take the magneto apart and find that tip. So just keep that in mind.
So what are you paying for with that magneto? Is it a pin?
No, it's just like the difference between, I don't know, owning a Civic to a Mercedes. I guess is a good way of looking at
That's
it.
a heck of a comparison. I just said, what
Well,
if-
seriously though,
It's
because
like 20,000.
they do the same
It's
purpose.
like apples to oranges.
They do the same purpose. These are just newer.
They still need the 500-hour inspections on both of them. They
Yeah,
still
the
need
inspection times
overhaul.
may be different. But yeah, they still need an overhaul and so forth. But the slick magnetos are just a nicer version of the Bendix, but they do the same thing. They get you from point A to point B. And when I showed you guys the North Dakota University, remember I showed you guys that to look at that? That is actually a breakdown of a slick magneto. So remember when I was showing you guys it and it looks almost identical to the Bendix, right? So if you guys want to take a look at that again, you can. It's just we can't afford to break down slick magnetos because they're very expensive to own. We happen to have the Bendix. So, internal inspection is done during overhaul and prescribed inspection periods. AD service bulletins do call for interior inspection for some models at specific intervals. So different models, different types may have different hours when it comes to overhaul or inspection. And these will be called out in the ADs or service bulletins. You didn't like my Civic to Mercedes example?
Try Corolla next time.
Oh, Corolla?
Yeah.
What is wrong with a Corolla?
Basically a Civic. Does the same thing.
So you want me to compare a Civic to a Corolla?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Compact to compact, not luxury to economy.
Well, I can afford probably a Bendix versus a Slick. I can afford a Corolla and a Civic probably.
Yeah.
So, price
Since
wise.
you can't afford a Mercedes.
Yeah, I can afford Mercedes. They
I
break
don't
down.
want
They're so expensive. Same thing with Beamers. They break down. They're expensive.
You know what BMW stands for, right? Broke my wallet.
And some people have really good luck with them. I think it just depends on who you are.
There's a guy in my other class that has a Lotus. He drives a Lotus and meets every day. And Lotus stands for lots of trouble, usually serious.
But then there's some people who don't have any problems. Like I loved my Hyundai Accent. People hate Hyundais. That little POS guy hit 3 times. The block was cracked, and it still was driving like nothing had ever happened to it. But other people, they hate the thing, and it breaks on them on the first day. You never know. Everybody have that written down? And take that as a yes. Okay. Overhaul constitutes replacement of primary wear items and cleaning. Additional requirements may include measuring rotor flux for loss of magnetism. So remember I said all these things that they could do in an overhaul shop? This is probably one of them that I can't do in my shop.
Hopefully you can jump to the remagnetizer.
I don't either. But that's something that they could do at overhaul. Everybody got that one down? Yeah? Okay. So, magneto overhaul usually done through an MRO, maintenance repair operator. So, units returned or exchanged, which be returned after they are overhauled, should have a release tag on them. have 20 more minutes till lunch. You guys doing all right? Okay.
Linda, is it one of those deals where if you do an exchange, it's cheaper than if you wait for your own magneto to come down?
I wouldn't say necessarily that it's cheaper.
It's faster.
It's faster. It's gonna most of the time it costs a little bit more to get an exchange because it's a faster process. So it would serve you more to wait for your own.
Sometimes they do exchanges if you have a business.
Yeah, it depends on your business. If you have a good rapport with whatever shop that's doing the overhauls, they may exchange and make things go quicker for you. Because the quicker you get things done, you get paid quicker. Okay, everybody got that down? So, like I said, exchange overhaul magnetos are priced at $600. It's a rough estimate, but somewhere around that ballpark. Versus having a new one, which is a couple grand. And when they overhaul it, they replace all the main components anyway that you need to make the magneto work. So why not just get it overhauled unless you're upgrading to some other system?
The same brand though, right? The same brand.
Same brand. I said unless you're upgrading to something different. So if you want to change it in and you want to change your, what is it, your Corolla for a Civic or Civic for a Corolla? So everybody got that? Yeah?
Linda, and then when you get those back, you still have to do them yourself, the internal timing and the external timing.
Well, external timing you'll have to. They'll internal equipment.
Okay.
So you'll have to time it to your man or to your engine, sorry. Because all of that's done at overhaul. Okay, so the points of magneto are the primary wear item. So your breaker points are going to be the biggest wear item. So most likely those will be replaced during overhaul. So your distributor finger and your distributor block are the next likely to fail. And then your coils may fail due to heat, particularly from large spark plug gaps. I had a couple of coils that were melted. I'll see if I can find them or if Mark has them so you guys can see what they look like. And even though your capacitor is not on this list, it is an item that has a good potential to fail as well. But it's not one of the top 3.
Why would a large spark plug gap?
So the gap is wider, so it's staying in the coil longer. It's not collapsing because the gap's wider. So it's going to stay hanging out in there longer, so it's going to heat up.
Okay, that makes sense. Get some of that juicy stuff.
So we have that down?
This is because you can't check the gap. The
You just
voltage
look it
change.
up, yeah. So it's hanging out there longer. longer it stays in there. Oops, sorry guys. Ooh, we're getting close to pictures. Is everybody excited? Pictures are always great, right? Okay, points typically wear in several ways, almost always leaving some pitting values and peaks. And I have different pictures and showing you different wear treads that they have. Everybody got that down? Yeah? Okay. So this is what a regular one looks like. So just like when you guys get brand new points, there's no valleys or anything. It's completely straight across. Wish these pictures were like in color. Maybe I'll work on that. So here we go. See how it's starting to wear from the metal transfer? It's not a flat surface anymore. You're starting to get those little valleys in there. So these are just pictures of what happens over time of running the engine. Because you know, when you're opening and closing that point, metal's transferring the whole time, right? And the condenser's helping eliminate some of that, but it doesn't eliminate all of it.
Okay, so you have to actually remove one of the points just to see this. Because otherwise they're right on top of each other.
Yeah, but you can, when you're doing the adjustment, when they open, when you're doing your timing, you can look straight in there, you can see if they're flatter. Like I have my points in here. But I get what you're saying, they are very close together. Probably can't see with my
I mean, we're sort of looking at them from the side and trying to open them up a bit.
Yeah, but you can open them. I actually had a group look at theirs and they were seeing that they were closed, but they weren't closed fully, right? Yeah, you can see if they're not completely touching straight across. Okay. And here's just another one where it's wearing. You guys kind of get the general gist of what it looks like when it's new versus when it's been used a while, right? So after this, you're not going to have direct contact with both of them evenly after you start losing metal to metal over here. So here's just another picture out of a maintenance manual out of the PowerPlant. I think it used to be the green book. It's a different book now, but we used to have a green book. So it's just different pictures of what different things can happen to the points. And most of the time during overhaul, they replace the points anyway. Okay, so aircraft magneto installation. So this is in red. So red means pay attention to. Treat all aircraft engines as if they were a loaded gun. So remember what I said about the magneto grounding? Don't assume that it's perfectly fine even if it's in the off position. Always be cautious of that prop spinning.
How come they so commonly fail?
Because they rub up on the side of the firewall where they're exposed to, depending on how old they are. And then there's other reasons why it might fail internally.
Why would they not solve this in some other way?
That was
Okay, well, just like in your car, things wear over time, right?
No, but I mean, like, if there's, I mean, for example, I could think of a way to solve, like, before you even get in the plane, you know, or, you know, there'd be a way to disconnect the magneto altogether from the engine, you know.
So when you're doing your timing to the magneto to the engine, what you're going to do is you're going to disconnect that P lead. Most of the time you disconnect the P lead and you're going to put a meter on both sides of that wire to make sure that that wire is good. So when you're doing maintenance, yes. But let's say that I've been running this engine for 200 hours and I've had students in and out of there and so forth. The last time you checked my magnetos was how long ago? Now, if you went through everything, so if you as a pilot went through all of this, do you know how long it would take you to check all these things before you went flying? And who's to say that your capacitor was good today, tomorrow it could be bad? And you're like, I just checked it. Well, it could be bad today, so that magneto's not running. So it's not just the P lead that's an issue. There's so many things that could potentially be wrong. And the only way to avoid that is have everything brand new all the time. And to make sure you check it all the time, which is not possible.
Okay, I'm sorry, maybe I'm failing. If my grandmother came to the airplane and knows nothing about airplanes, and these things keep firing and killing people, why haven't they done anything about?
Okay, so when your engine's running, are you gonna have your grandmother put her hand on the engine?
No, but she does wander around with Alzheimer's, like, in, you know, if I brought her here.
You should be watching
But
your.
airports have fences.
I'm just saying.
Wait, what I'm saying is
Like,
you
what
need to
device
treat.
could they use instead of a P-lead? Is there anything that they came up instead of a P-lead?
Well, P lead's not your only issue. That's what I'm telling you. Is that things
I'm
could
just saying
fail
there's other
internally all the
things.
time. It's an engine.
Right.
There's always something that could happen. That's what they're trying to tell you, that these things are potentially dangerous. You guys all know that. It's not to say that they always fail, but especially when you're around old stuff, when we're talking about when you're here at school, this stuff has been running for 50, 60 years, whatever. You have to be aware of that. Your grandmother's not going to come touch this prop.
Oh, you don't know her.
Well, you don't put your grandmother in a gun range and let her
Okay,
run
I guess
around.
okay. My uncle, he's a pilot. We had a wedding,
Yeah.
and he did it in a hangar with lots of old planes and stuff. And there's he's got the little taped off area where you can't go into. But knowing her, she would go over there, and and decide, hey, I want to play with this plane or whatever. So.
Most deaths are caused by students leaving the key in the mag, not by a failing pre-lead.
So, but there's always tons of potentials that could be wrong. Most of it's by human error. But my grandmother walking up to the airplane doesn't know that the switch is supposed to be switched off. She's just like, oh, look at this little thing that sticks out of the engine. So, but you have to be aware of that. Just like when you go to a gun range, you take a safety course, do you not? It tells you what you're supposed to look out for, what you're not. It's the same thing with going to an airport and going by the engines. Even when you guys take your recips class, you guys go through a safety thing. He tells you what you should be touching, what you shouldn't be touching, that you need to be aware of this, you need to be aware of that. And that's part of being in aviation. That's part of being around anything that could potentially give you harm. And that's all we're telling you, is just to be aware. And most of the time when people get in accidents is because when they get too comfortable. When you get too comfortable with something, you forget, just like with guns, you forget that you don't have the safety on. You get too comfortable with whatever you're doing, and you forget that there's a potential risk that you could hurt yourself or injure or kill somebody. That's all this is saying. But as far as just the P-lead, that's not just the issue. There's all sorts of issues that can happen. Just like Alex said, students leave the mag switch on all the time because the engine, you can turn the engine off and leave the mags on and hot and walk away from it. But the mags are still hot. So you let me know when you have your grandmother, and I'll hold her hand and we can walk around together. Does that kind of make sense?
Just
It's
disconnect the harness, the ignition harness, before she shows up.
Yeah, there's ways to.
What I'm trying to say is, like, you can't always watch people, you know what I mean? So, and people don't know, like, for example, if a kid runs out in the middle, at least around a car, everything's in a hood.
Yeah,
That's why you
but you
gotta
also
grease
gotta
them.
understand something. I'm gonna tell you something. I was at the drive-in, and I got to see a kid get run over. The woman's emergency brake went out in her car, and it rolled over and killed her kid. You can't always watch everything.
Yeah.
But the engine's not running, but the kid still got crushed and
I
killed.
watched my kid like.
But that would be, like, the emergency brake would be, I don't know, I guess, the odds of it going off, I don't know.
Well, in older cars, mine has gone out many times. It's just how it happens.
In props, Lonnie drew a diagram on the board.
Mhm.
And there were multiple places that you could have failures in the magnetos. Just some working on the wiring.
Yeah, there's anything that you're looking for. That's why when you overhaul these, that's why they have these overhauls set in place, because over so many hours, they already know certain parts are gonna fail. But you can't predict and fix everything. So I'm not saying just the P lead, I'm not saying just students. There's all sorts of issues that are involved with it. But you guys need to be aware of this. And if you're not standing, and you always don't stand in the arc of a prop, you guys know that.
Unless that's your goal.
Unless that's your goal.
Well, unless like that's what you want to
Get chopped up.
Yeah.
Jake.
have. Come on, man.
So just like I said, stay clear of the prop part. Well, if that was my goal, I'd jump off a bridge or, those are.
Why make a mess?
I don't think I want to walk. The prop wouldn't be my way, but I heard it's quick.
Why leave a mess?
It would make a big mess, though. That's the big.
I don't know. Maybe people don't care if somebody else has to pick up the mess. I don't know. But this is just telling you guys to be aware that these are dangerous. That's all it is. That they have the potential to be dangerous. And you will have to touch the prop because you'll have to do compression strokes and you'll have to do hand propping. But you want to make sure that you are in the safest place you could possibly be and you can get out of the way as quickly as you can. When you guys do recips, you'll most likely will do hand propping. But you don't want to be in the arc of the prop. Or the prop of the arc prop. Okay, so aircraft magnetos are attached to the engine case with adjustable hold down clamps or fasteners. Most aircraft engines use 2 independent magnetos. Most. Some of them have the dual inside, like we talked about earlier. And the reason we do this for, somebody was telling me that the dual mag is just as good. If that drive fails, you don't have no mags whatsoever.
If your shear shaft fails on 2 independent mags, 1 mag is still running.
Correct.
If your shear shaft fails on a dual mag,
They're not running
you have no
anymore.
mags.
And a lot of people have upgraded to having independent mags. There's still duals out there, and people haven't had any problems with them. Just like I said, my Honda Accent, I had no problems with it. Somebody else had it for 1 day and it broke on them. This is just trying to eliminate that, so if that does fail, you also have another mag to go back on. And this adjustable clamps is just, it's got the cutouts where you rotate it to give it those slight adjustments. That's what this is talking about. We're going to go to lunch here in about 4 minutes, and then we're going to come back into lecture for just a few more minutes before I send you guys to the lab. Everybody got that down? Okay. So like I said, some use dual magnetos, 2 magnetos, 1 drive. There's still tons of airplanes out there flying this way.
Somebody built it.
And people don't have problems with them, but like I said, just depends. This is just eliminating if that does happen, then you have another one to rely on.
Is that a preference thing?
A preference?
Yeah, 2 mags on 1 drive.
Some were built this way. Like I said, most of them have gone to the 2 independent magnetos, because if one fails, you have another one. If the drive fails on a dual magneto,
And
you
they're both
lost
shot.
They're both shot, and you're dead in the air. So that's just a newer model. Okay. The gear drive must be correctly aligned to the engine gears. Get an ignition lead for each cylinder. To maintain proper timing, each lead must be attached to the correct cylinder in the engine firing order. So what this means is, I don't know if you guys have looked closely at your distributor here. It fires 1, 2, 3, 4, right? Okay, well if you guys know anything about timing on engines, they don't fire at 1, 2, 3, 4, do they not? Most of them are 1, 3, 2, 4, and so forth. When they're talking about this, you're gonna set that number 2 on your distributor block to whatever cylinder is going to fire second. So if the second cylinder is gonna be number 3, your number 2 on your block is gonna be number 3 on the engine. You guys understand that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. We're gonna go through firing order. I don't know if I'm going to do it tonight. I'm gonna look through the slides and see because we didn't get as far as I wanted to, but since I only have one group ready to check out, it's not gonna hurt you guys if we continue on next week into timing to the engine. Is everybody other written down?
At break time?
You guys are free to go to lunch. I'll see you guys back here at 6:30.